Achieving Success with Olivia Atkin. I'm your host, Olivia Atkin. Each week, we will discuss the roadmap of achieving your personal and professional success. We give you real life stories on growing personally and professionally to achieve your life and career goals with the help of some top notch guests. Today, we are speaking with Austin Bonderer. Austin is the principal and founder of the law office of Austin Bonderer PC, where he helps innovators and entrepreneurs protect their ideas through clear, strategic patent guidance. With over 2 decades of experience in intellectual property law, Austin's impressive career includes securing more than 700 issued U.S. patents and advising international companies around the world. Before launching his firm, he served as a U.S. patent examiner, giving him insider experience into how the patent system truly works. Driven by a passion for helping creators turn ideas into protective innovations, Austin simplifies what often feels like an overwhelming process, empowering innovators to take confident steps towards bringing their visions to life. His ability to translate complex legal concepts into practical, human-centered advice makes him not just a trusted attorney, but a true advocate for innovation. You can find Austin by going to his website, bondererpatents.com. Hello, Austin. It's fantastic having you on the show today.
Thanks, Olivia. I'm happy to be here.
To start off the show, can you tell me what success means and looks like to Austin Bonderer?
Well, it's changed over the years, but now it is the ability to enjoy my life and get to do the things I've always wanted to do.
So that being said, because I think it's so important to not just in personal life, but professionally, really enjoy what you're doing and have joy throughout your day. What made you decide as you've built your career that opening your own law practice was what was going to give you that next level of joy?
Well, the one great thing about patents, I mean, people ask me, what do I really do for a living? I don't prepare people for litigation. I don't work on that side. So I basically just write term papers for people and then argue those term papers on paper or over the phone. So technically I can, give them the gift of the internet and stuff like that. I can do this wherever I want. So I can actually just go on extended vacations to places I want to be and just work there during the day and enjoy the evening or enjoy time with the family and those kind of things. And that's where you know, especially having your own practice allows you to do that a little bit more freely than I would think. When you're working for someone, they want to see you working. My boss is a jerk, but he's myself. So that's kind of how that goes, right?
For you, and that being said, too, how do you define if you are traveling, when is your work hours versus when you're taking that time to be present in personal activities you're doing?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, you are running a business. And when you don't have one boss, you have hundreds of bosses. So you need to make sure that, if something comes up, you have to tell your family, hey, right now, this is what puts food on our table, allows us to do this. This has to come first. And then you just, you're able to work things around. And you know how it is. It's the government. So your deadlines are, the quickest deadline we have is like 2 months. So if you're not able to schedule your stuff and work your things around like that, then that's on you. But every now and then you'll have a client come up to you and say, hey, I have to file something tomorrow. And then you just got to get it done.
And how do you communicate that, to your family? Because sometimes, like, it sounds nice, right? And it's like, oh, yeah, like, I can set this time apart, I could do this, but, we'll bring an example up of holiday times, right? A lot of times when you start to get around holiday times, no matter what holiday in the year, and companies are giving people off and expectation is you get time off, but you are an entrepreneur, you are someone who might get that client call at any time. How do you say no, like, I need to be present even though, like, you might have off, the family, kids, whatever might have off, I need to still be doing this.
Well, I mean, I try to explain it on the good times as well as the rough times. It's kind of like understand that, while we're able to do this fun stuff and I'm able to be present on these items right now, this is my business, and this, in a way, is our business. This is something we have to do in order to make it work the way we've been able to do it. So it's the pluses and minuses. I think, with my son, I think he sees, you know, it's not all fun and games. You put in the work. I wish he saw me go to law school at night and really put in the work, type thing. He's like, you're just doing this, this, and this, and you're just sitting there working on a computer. I'm like, trust me, I paid my dues. But there are times that you still got to pay your dues and you still got to make it work. And I think if you explain it during the good times, it prepares them, during the bad times as well.
And I love how you bring up paying your dues, but also having that conversation and like the computer, right? Oh, from the computer, you could get up. I remember when I go visit my family, and when I was starting my business, again, you're now your own boss. You can get up when you want and this and that to some extent. And I was at my parents' house visiting, and they walk through the door, they're done their day, their patients, they're done with that. And then they just come into the office and they're like, hey, you want to do this? Or, hey, can you help me with this? And I'm like, I'm doing work. Like I'm about to jump on a call. I cannot do that. But that level of sometimes, because your business, just like mine, is like online, those lines get blurred of, hey, like I can't just get up and do that. I've even had conversation with friends, stay at home moms where we're currently stationed, and they want to do activities, and they're like, hey, let's go out for lunch. I'm like, I have meetings all day. I'd love to go out to lunch. But like you said, it's setting that expectation, and I think it's really important to set that, as you said, and I'm going to start implementing that myself more, like highlighting it in good moments so that it's better communicated in not so good moments. And that being said, you've built a career around protecting ideas and something most people only dream about having, right? That thing that's protected that they have created. When you look back, what moment made you realize that this was something more than just a profession for you, but a personal mission you were driven to help as many people protect as possible?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, I guess you just call me the old-fashioned nerd. I love the cool new stuff that comes through, and I enjoy really, seeing the new things. And it's when the first time you really help someone start a business and they do well, and it's not your child by any means; it's theirs and stuff. But you feel like you had a part in it, and there's nothing like seeing a client do well and really take what you've helped them do and turn it into something that could be huge, or that they're very proud about. And it's that, and it doesn't happen all the time. I mean, I sometimes tell clients, you might be better off putting this money in the stock market. Patents are speculative. I mean, it's a patent, but you're also starting a business, and we all know that not all businesses work out. But if you believe in it and you keep pushing it, the patents can help ensure that investment in time and energy. But when they do make it, I feel, it makes me proud and happy that I was able to help with them with that.
And I want to take it a step farther back, because as you were explaining this in my head, I was like, if I'm listening to this and I do not know all legal terms, I want clarity on exactly what is a patent and what does patent law look like. So can you explain what, in human words, simple words, for us, what is a patent and why is that having a patent important? And I mean, I have a few follow-up questions off of that idea, but I'll slow it down for you.
Okay. So a patent, just at the end of the day, is a government issued monopoly for a limited amount of time on your idea or design. So the idea is, what I tell people it really kind of is, it helps you develop a market. Like if you have an idea that this thing's going to work and you want to try and make it work, it gives you some space to block other people out, hopefully, so you can see if this idea will work. And then you can get return on your investment of time and energy in making this thing work.
I mean, for someone who's thinking they're starting their business and they're going, should I have patent? Should I not? How does someone know, or what is the conversation you have with them to identify if moving forward with creating a patent is even the right move for them?
See, that one's tough. That's the business decision. You're putting a large investment. I mean, especially if you're a startup and you are bootstrapping, you know, 10 to 12, 15 grand on a patent, you know, is that the best use of your money when you're starting up? Because at the end of the day, startups, cash is king. The more cash you have, the easier it is for you to maneuver and pivot. However, year three, year four, say you start making some money, and then all of a sudden, you know, once people see that you're getting traction, and I think there's like software out there that can track what's being sold on Amazon, what's all this other stuff, you're going to have competitors move in, and then you're kind of going to wish that you had that patent, especially on places like Amazon, and then you can use Amazon's intellectual property protections to say, hey, I have this patent. I believe these people are infringing. Amazon's very like, whoa, okay, we just don't want to deal with that kind of stuff. So, that's where it comes in. It's a protection on your investment. But then again, it's speculative because it's a new business. You don't know if that business is going to work. So it's a large upfront cost that may pay off in the future if your business is going well.
And when you were saying that, it even brought me back to when I started my podcast in business. When I started doing podcast consulting, I was really the first in the industry to do podcast audits. 2 years ago, I went to my one and only podcast conference, and I'm like walking around trying to see, oh, what's the new tech that's going to be coming out and this and that. And I saw a lot of booths where they were for people more starting out. And that's why I haven't returned to that conference. But it's the booths itself were like, oh, we do a podcast audit and we do, a lot of things that I've been doing for years. It was like the new innovative thing. We'll help you get on this podcast, or we'll grow your podcast. And it was like, I remember two of the booths, one of them tried to be like, oh, you need a podcast audit. And I'm like, how long have you been doing this? And like, I'm asking them questions, right? And they're like, well, like 4 months. We saw someone else who's doing it. I'm like, who did you see doing it? And they're like, oh, this podcast host. And I was like, I'm the podcast host. And then, I'm like, and then another booth, and then it was at towards the end, was like, hey, if you want international listenership, you need to put your podcast on our system and you need to hire us so that international listenership and this and that. And I looked at him. My boyfriend had come to this conference with me because it was in Orlando and I love Disney and we were going to go to Disney right after. And I looked at him and I go, oh, what countries do you help? Like, do I need your software for? And he lists about 4, and I stop him. I go, I don't need it. And he goes, oh, you definitely do. And I go, I'm already in those countries, and I didn't use your system to get there. So, and I was like, as you grow and as industry grows, as you mentioned, you will see other people come in and see that there is success in an area and try to pivot. But to your point, you have to either be confident and invest in the patent in the beginning, or be okay with what could potentially happen long term. Either way.
Right. Exactly. I mean, one of the things I tell people about, they're always like, well, what if I get on Kickstarter or this or that? I'm like, there are companies out there that just monitor Kickstarter. If something gains traction, they will beat you to market because you're trying to build funds in order to manufacture this product. They already have the funds. They're just looking for a product to manufacture.
Mm-hmm. And that's fine too. You see a lot of sometimes the knockoff or like significantly cheaper items on any platform where you're like, oh, I could buy this for $10.
Well, technically, I always tell my clients, like, look, when you come out with your brand, and, especially if it's a consumer product, you come out with your brand, but you're already working on your knockoff, your own knockoff. because you have the
Ooh,
patent to protect it. But I mean, it's one of these things, you should be hitting both price points.
I
And
love
the
that
patent will
idea.
allow you to do that.
Hmm. So the I'm going to take this a little step further. I know
Okay.
the answer, but I want it to be really clear. Is the patent only for someone with a tangible product, or is patents also important to have on a service-based business, for example?
Well, that one gets a little interesting. So yes, you can patent a method. Methods can get a little, like method manufacturing sometimes get a little tricky because all that's done behind closed doors. So you don't know if someone's copying your method without looking behind their closed door, which is really hard to do. You can get patents on, service items. That's good. I mean, it's just like any other protection. The issue then tends to be is that a lot of times nowadays that service issue involves computers and it's inherently software. So and then the Supreme Court came out and said that some software is patentable, but most of it is not. And most of the consumer facing software that we deal with, it's most likely not going to be patented. But even then, when we could get software patented easier, it would take us like 5 or 6 years. And I can't tell you how many times we go to a client, be like, hey, we got your patent. And we're like, thanks. But we stopped doing that 4 years ago because software moves so fast.
Mhm.
It's not like where you have a manufactured product where you have to retool the whole line, you have to do all the stuff. They literally just do some code, hit enter, boom, the whole thing's changed.
So, how long, if someone was interested in working with you to get that patent made, when is the most optimal time to reach out to you? And then how long should someone expect the process to take?
Well, that depends. So people ask me, how do I know if I have something that might be patentable? And the first thing I say is, did you solve a problem? So the first thing is I would say is, if you solve a problem, let's do a prior art search first. Then we'll see one, if we find something like, hey, this is already patented or this, then you won't waste your time on trying to develop something that you might not be able to use, or just understand that you're not going to get a patent on this. Two, it's like research. So chances are you are not the first one to come at this problem, but you may be the first one to solve it the way you did. But in the research that is done, you might be able to incorporate some teachings from others when they were trying to do the same thing or solve the same problem. So I call it shaking the tree. Once you tell smart people your idea, they almost indefinitely say, "Well, what about this?" So if you look at these patents are in the same area and do the same, fix the same problem that you're trying to fix, it might shake something loose where you have even a better idea than what you had originally.
And that being said, you've seen patents from both sides as a US patent examiner and now as an attorney. What's something you wish every inventor understood before they even started the process?
Well, not from my experience. I mean, it's just general patent experience. Just don't tell anybody. Just stop. Just disclosures kill patents. Don't. I understand you did something really cool. You did an awesome thing, and you want to tell people. You want to brag about it, but it will kill your patent. The United States is interesting that it gives you 1 year from your first public disclosure to file a patent application. However, if you disclose it and somehow it gets out there and someone beats you to the patent office, the first one to the patent office wins. Now, granted, if you can prove they actually got the idea from you, that'd be one thing, but that's very difficult. You've caused all kinds of problems. You know, I can't tell you, a lot of people call and say, hey, I've been selling this for a year and a half. I want to get a patent on it now. Too late. So it's one of these things where do not disclose it. Do not put it on Facebook. I mean, I tell people it's like their baby. They want to show everybody. They're like, hey, look at the cool little baby I made. Don't. Call a patent attorney. You can tell them all about it. You can brag as much as you want. That's a confidential conversation, and it's not considered public disclosure.
It actually reminds me of a recent episode. I don't know if you watched the show Matlock. That came came out, and they had a case in the show where one of the family members had opened this business with her, I think it was her brother or cousin, and they were doing really well, and they decided to part ways, and then he decided to go get a food truck, and literally same recipe that she had created, and basically everything was the same, and she was trying to fight the fact that, like, listen, he's copying what I've created, but she never got it patented. And they're like, can you tell the difference? And it ended up that showcase of what happened going to court. And what they ended up doing was, the judge was like, can you prove, like, in some testimony they mentioned that she challenged him in a family reunion, like, oh, if you could do it better, then, like, go do it and run the business better from the business side. And so they had to prove that she actually said that, and that he wasn't taking the intellectual property and just, like, running with it. So it was interesting. And as you're saying, that story of, like, just don't tell people, and you only do have a limited amount of time if you want something that protects you to have recourse. You need to understand, don't want to always open your mouth. I mean, I remember even now when I do really exciting things, I have a really exciting guest on, or it's working with a client, or I'm coming out with a new offer. I've learned through my own experiences, just keep it quiet. Keep it quiet until that person's on, and recorded, because especially if it's a high caliber guest. I'll use Ronda Rousey as an example. Ronda Rousey's team had reached out to me when she was going to release her new book. They sent me her book before it even came out to read so we could discuss it on the podcast. I started telling people, I was like, I have her book. It's amazing. You definitely need to buy it when it comes out. And she's going to be a guest on my podcast. And I was super amped. And then, like, just communication with her team and planning it just fell through. And then people kept being like, well, when's Ronda Rousey's? And I had the release date of her book. So I was like telling people, like, definitely go and get this book when it comes out because it's awesome. But she was never, to this day, has never been a guest on my podcast. And it was just speaking about it before it actually came to fruition. And same thing with, like, offers, as we kind of discussed earlier. I've learned through early situations where I've told people, oh, yeah, like, this is the offer. And they ask follow-up questions on the pricing. And then, like, 6 months later, oh, wait, that person has decided they could try to do it too. And now, instead of collaborating, we're competing for clients in a way, right? There's enough space in the industry for everyone. But those early, like, oh, I need to be more careful with what I say when I say it, really makes you understand the importance of, you could be solving a problem, but if you tell the wrong person, they will realize, even if it's not at the same caliber, they could try to do that knockoff version of solving the problem.
Yeah, I mean, I basically tell people like, look, most people don't care. And the ones that do are the ones you need to worry about. It's like, because most of the time the inventions are very technical and very specific about something. And you might tell, somebody at a party and they're like, oh, that's great. Yeah. Hmm. But the guy's like, really, really, tell me more. I want to know all about it. That's where you need to get all, ding, 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 stop. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's kind of funny
Yes.
you mentioned that about the cooking thing. In LA, I don't know if it's still there, but there was this famous uh, Vietnamese noodle place. I think it was a Vietnamese noodle called Crustacean, and then I think it was called Crustacean. They literally had a kitchen inside the kitchen where they made the special noodles because only the family would know how to make the noodles, and everyone else worked in the kitchen outside.
Mm-hmm. And just shows to the value, right? If you bring a certain value to the table, it's like sometimes. But I love how you also brought up the fact that, like, the person that seems to, like, really interested, take note of that as you're communicating, and know to kind of hold the brakes. And that's something, I mean, even like now when certain people ask me about certain things or how exactly I'm doing it, I take caution. I'm like, okay, you want to know things that go to a very different level of, oh, that's interesting. Can you give me perspective on this? Why? And it's not like just necessarily, and I love your opinion on this, shut down, but it's also be cautious and understand when to kind of pivot the conversation and leave things out. Not where you're being rude and just being like, oh, you're asking too many questions, I'm walking away, but
Right.
being like, oh, I'm taking note. They're getting very interested in this. What is the reason they're getting so interested?
Especially, I mean, some things can't be patented. So some things you try to treat as a trade secret. It's competitive advantage that you just can't get a patent on. Because understand, sometimes I talk to clients and like maybe we should go the trade secret route. If you can keep something as a black box and doesn't have to be disclosed, a trade secret can last forever. I mean, look at Coca-Cola, right? I mean, that's the whole thing. They do not. Nobody truly knows the recipe except maybe one or two people, but they've kept it trade secreted. Same thing we are talking about the noodles. That's a trade secret. That's in there. They keep it secret. And even if it kind of gets out a little bit, they can sue because they're like, look, we maintained this properly as a trade secret. It was improperly left out. There is some protections there. But if you have a competitive advantage, don't let people know. I mean,
Mhm.
especially in an industry that can just run with it.
So, what qualifies, since you brought it up, as a trade secret? And then how do you go about that? Like, what if someone's trying to figure out, is this a trade secret? Is it a patent? What does a trade secret look like? And then how is that process differential than going the patent route?
Well, take like a recipe. You can't do a patent on a recipe. But the quid pro quo for a patent is within 20 years of filing, it now becomes part of the public domain. So if you have a recipe and somehow you were able to get a patent on it, understand within 20 years, everyone can make it and there's nothing you can do about it. In fact, you had to disclose how to make it. One of the specifics of a patent is you have to teach one of skill in the art how to make and use your invention. So it's the public, you're getting monopoly in exchange for moving knowledge forward in society. Trade secrets are, nope, this is mine. I'm not going to let anybody know. In order to establish trade secrets, it's generally, state specific, and you really need an attorney to go through your SOPs and be like, look, you need to keep this here. You got to have you got to treat it like a secret. I mean, like truly a secret, top secret. You got to limit the amount of people who can see it. Make sure it's not just anyone who can walk in and find these papers. The attorney will help you set up, standard operating procedures and employee handbooks and these kind of things, employment contracts that, solidify this information as a trade secret. Now you have to follow it and you have to be diligent. You can't just be like, hey, I have all these papers. It means I have a trade secret now. Voila. No, it's a practice. It's something you have to do every day. It's just that kind of work that you have to put into it. And so that's the client has to make that decision. Do they want that 20 years of protection that they may or may not get? Or do they want to keep it a trade secret? But obviously, with a product that you manufacture and put out there on the market, anyone can reverse engineer that. So it's got to be something that can be kept in house. Generally, it's processes. It may be a machine that you keep, secret because you built it, it's custom, and it gives you a competitive advantage that no one else has. But once someone figures it out, you have no protection.
And it's something too, it sounds like where like Coca-Cola, it has to be under lock and key. You tell one, two people, and again, going back to like keep your mouth shut, you don't know who they're gonna tell. You don't know, you bring someone on. I know right now, like VAs are such a big thing, and people are like, hire this VA. And I earlier today was having a conversation with a guy who originally like a month ago, 2 months ago, we had a call about us working together on his podcast. He already has a podcast out and doing his titles, descriptions, uploading them, making sure everything's optimized and this and that. And he had come back to me and was like, hey, listen, like, I want to have this um outsource, like bring in an internal, like kind of through a VA, but not a VA. marketing person, and they are going to be hired through with their company. Again, I same conceptual idea of a VA, but focused on certain tasks that are a little deeper in content. And he's like, and I brought up my podcast growth partner because he's like, yeah, but I'm gonna have to train her and this and that. And I was like, oh well, the podcast growth partner could train her. We could do a consulting call in that manner so she understands like how to look at certain things. And he was like, okay, let me like finalize bringing this person on or who I'm gonna bring on, and let's have another call. And we had that call today, and he gets on the call. I'm like, oh, how's everything been going? And this and that. And he's like, so you know that person I was hiring and this and that? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, it so did not work out. And I was like, okay. And I'm like, so do you want to have the same conversation we were gonna have today? And he's like, actually, can we have that conversation and have a conversation about you just taking everything over again? So it goes back to like certain ideas you start to tell people, and they're like, okay, I could do this on my own or take it somewhere else. However, there's a level that like you can't do. So, like, or other people can't do. So, you really got to understand how much to share and when to share it. Yeah. I want to go a little bit deeper into when you work with someone, patents, especially if someone's, and please correct me if I'm wrong, majority of people who come to you probably have never gone through the patent process before. And when you hear patent and you know the impact it can make, it can seem very intimidating and very daunting. In your experience, what's the biggest mindset shift that turns this is too complicated, kind of throwing my hands in the air to into like I can do this and this is the right path?
Well, I mean, that's what I tell them. Is like, I'm here for you. Again, I write a term paper. You give me the sketch and this, and from there I'll take it and then put it to paper. And it is complicated, but to a certain extent, patents. They're term papers. I mean, it's just a complicated, wordy document. It helps. I mean, an engineer could write a patent, but they wouldn't write a good patent without some legal training because there are legal considerations that we have to consider. If you wanted to write a very technical, specific document, that would do it. But being attorneys, we know that you need to try to box out as much as you want to be specific to your exact invention because the broader your claims are, the more protection you have. And that's kind of where this legal training, and experience comes from is that, when we use these terms, I know some people are like, what's the hardest part of your job? I'm like, trying to find a generic name for that one element that's basically a screw, but I don't want to limit it to a screw. So it's got to be like the top third element, fastener, this kind of stuff. And then after a while, you're dealing with these, some of these names are like this long, but at the end of the day, it's a screw, but you don't want someone being able to come in and then use a rivet or some
Mhm.
other means of fastening to get around your patent. So that's where, I basically tell people we go generic to specific. We say one embodiment, it can be a fastener. And then in some embodiments, that fastener can be a screw. So that's part of the benefit that you get of having an attorney do that for you. And I mean, frankly, I've dealt with, some looked like a kindergarten, drew this picture and was like, hey, can you turn this into a patent? I'm like, no problem. I'll take care of it. So,
And then being said, you've worked with innovators all over the world, not just within the US. How has that global exposure shaped the way you think about creativity and innovation, not just legally, but also culturally? And how has that potentially even going a step further taken impact in how you write your patents?
well, I would say, so one of the things that I'll do with a client, I'm like, hey, do you think we're going to file in the EU? EU is just, I do not like it. Sorry, I don't mean to offend anyone, but to me, they're almost anti-patent. And they have these very draconian rules and the way they do things. So basically, I learned if I have an application that was likely to go into the EU, I actually hire, or we hire, an EU patent attorney to basically, once we write the US application, they take it, they massage it so that it's good for both. Because the EU, just some of the disclosure rules, and if things are not disclosed in a certain way, you're kind of stuck. And the problem with patents is you file this patent application, you don't know how the examiner is going to look at it and how they're going to come back to you and what art they're going to use. And then sometimes you're like, I wish I had put that language in there, even though that's exactly what I meant. You're like, I didn't use that specific wonderful term that I should have, because we just don't know how the arguments are going to go. So we're kind of looking into a crystal ball, doing the best we can. The US is actually much more lenient in terms of, hey, you disclose that, or you principally disclose that. That verbiage does not have to be specific. The EU is like, you have to have a full sentence that says the exact item word for word. And this is where you kind of get into a lot of trouble, because US is pro patent, and a lot of people credit that with our great economic success. And the EU is very anti monopoly. So any public disclosure, EU, you're dead. That's it. They don't let any year go. They're also very specific about all the verbiage you use. So you're scared. So you end up writing a much bigger patent application because you don't know what kind of verbiage you're going to have to pull out. So you end up repeating yourself, just saying the same thing a little bit different. So it's much more expensive. The attorneys over there are a little more expensive. But so what I've done is that I now bring them in at the beginning.
And I'm assuming that also not only saves time, but it also brings me back to this thought process I live by, is making every word try out. I really, when I did my TED talk, it was the center of conversation, because you only have a certain amount of time. Now, you could go under that time, right, to give your talk. But if you're throwing in words to throw in words, how are people connecting to that? What are they taking away from it? And what is the real impact of the word? So the idea that we would talk about is, did you make that word try out in your talk? Now, my talk, I remember a lot of people's were, we had 12 minutes. After 12 minutes, you get cut off. So if you ran over, you're done, regardless. But we were given, by TED, everyone got 12 those minutes. And I wrote mine, I practiced mine, because especially too with the TED stage, you can't interact with the audience. And I'm someone who likes to interact with people, whether it's in a conversation like this or on the stage when I'm giving talks. And so I really focused in what are the points I want to make, how do I want to make them, and what terminology and body language do I want people to pick up on as the talk is going, and really made every word, and as I'm going through it, try out to be in on that stage, right? And on that conversation. My talk ended up being 5 minutes and 15 seconds. And afterwards, people were like, that was the most impactful thing I've listened to, and like resonated with it and connected and remembered it. Whereas like all the other, a lot of the others, I shouldn't say it, but a lot of the others, they would bring up certain points, but they couldn't resonate with it the same way. So when you're saying the importance of the verbiage in a patent and creating it and understanding, where is it going to show up, right? Is it just going to be the US? Is it going to be in the EU? What does that look like? Brings me back to the thought process of like, everything needs that tryout, and everything needs to be tried out in order of like understanding, right? Understanding what area, understanding the verbiage you need to put in, but also understanding who you're giving that information to as well, and like delivering it to your point. US is very pro, EU is not, so that means you have to understand that going into the process.
Well, with like the EU, the way I kind of look at it is you just throw the kitchen sink in there. I mean, you're just throwing a bunch of spaghetti at the wall, and because you don't know what's going to stick and when it's going to stick or when you have to pull it out or this kind of stuff. Same way. I mean, the thing is, a patent can be 100 pages long, but you end up charging your client. So it's all about return on investment. How much money are we spending? These kind of things. So you try to use your experience the best, but sometimes I mean, I understand it would be the opposite of a TED Talk. It's kind of like throw it all in there. I always say more disclosure better if you have any possible ideas. And one of the things I tell my clients too is like take a step back. You know what your idea is. What if someone had this idea and you were trying to get around it? Give me your ideas for that too. So we will put that in there because at the end of the day, patent is not only a sword, but it's a shield. And, like take the basketball now, you want to box out. You want people as far away from you as possible. Because the further they are away from you in terms of the ability to get to your product, that's the specific product that you really wanted, the more insurance you're going to have or, protection you're going to have in your market space.
So how can people get in touch with you if they want to connect with you?
Oh, they can just look up Austin Bonderer, Bonderer, and then patents. Lucky enough, I believe I'm the only patent attorney with that last name. So it should be pretty easy to find.
And we'll also be including your website in the description so people could just click and go. But Austin, thank you so much for all of your insight today. I feel like we could continue to talk and go down so many different avenues, but there's been so many insightful things you've shared with us today, not just from an aspect of what a patent is and how to look at it, how to look at other things, but also how to have a mindset of when to communicate, how to look at ideas. And I really appreciate all the insight you've shared today.
Well, thank you for having me, Olivia. I've enjoyed it immensely.
And a few of those key takeaways from today's conversation include patent is a government issued idea for a limited amount of time. I think that's such a good thing that Austin mentioned is understanding that you can create a patent and it only lasts for a certain amount of time. It isn't like, hey, I fill this out, I never have to think, or I could always sue someone. Understanding what that time actually looks like and understanding in general your timeline. Austin had also mentioned that you get 1 year from the time you start to make public your idea, you tell someone or you start selling it to create your patent. So you can't decide 2 years, 3 years down the line, oh, I want to get this patented. I don't want people to be able to copy it. You have to always be thinking about that timeline. And I'm a big process, procedure, planning person. Talked a lot about my planner and writing everything down before. So understanding not just writing down your to-dos for a day or a week and understanding what to expect, but also writing down in building something. What is that timeline? Okay, understanding, oh, whether it's on accident or not, I've now started to tell people this idea. I got really excited. And as Austin said, you go to a party, you bring it up. Well, now you got a year to make that decision, as well as don't, and it leads into the next one, don't tell anyone your idea. And Austin brought this up and it went through different things. Keep your mouth shut sometimes. Sometimes that is the best solution. And, he went into it's also being cautious when someone keeps asking more in-depth layers because those tend to be the people that might want to copy an idea or see another way to approach it, as well as that leads into the fact that you know sometimes you tell someone an idea and they can beat you to the market, and they could beat you to the patent, and it's whoever gets there first, as well as go from generic to very specific. I love how Austin brought this up because just like in business, right? When you're trying to solve any form of problem, start really broad and keep asking the question why or like how. or those questions, and get it narrower and narrower, and it will give you that full picture. And I want to challenge everyone that as they start building something, or they are building something and trying to grow it in their business, looking at it from that very broad perspective. How are people going to perceive it, and keep narrowing down to make it very specific to solve that problem. And lastly, one of my favorite sayings, so I'm going to probably start using it now that Austin brought up, is your patent is a sword and your shield. And understanding that it is both, not just one or the other. This was a great episode with our top-notch guest, Austin Bonderer. Thank you for listening, and have a successful day.